For the first time in over 130 years, we may have an answer as to who Jack the Ripper is. In the background of this video, to further help us relax, and for those of us who want to fall asleep, I will be painting the sketch that I made from the Spiderwick Chronicles. I will be painting it with my new chalk pastels. This is my second day trying them out and learning how to paint with them. So it will be interesting to see how better I can get after a while. So if this combination of sounds and visuals help you, do not forget to subscribe to my channel and please like this video and leave a comment before you fall asleep. That would make my day. Thank you. So now let's get to the beginning. England in the mid-19th century was not doing good at all, and specifically in its east end of London, and more specifically Whitechapel. Whitechapel was not doing good at all at this time. It had way too many people inside of it. Approximately 80,000 inhabitants lived there by 1888, and work and housing conditions really sucked. A significant amount of people were poor, if not most of them. 55% of children born in East End died before they were 5 years old. Now it makes sense that at a time like this, people dying of hunger, of illness, and of poverty, robbery, violence, and alcohol dependency were very common. And also, this poverty drove many women to work at night to survive the day. In the year 1888 alone, it was estimated that there were 62 brothels and 1,200 women working in only Whitechapel. That is a lot of people. Around 8,500 people were living in 233 houses, these tiny little houses in Whitechapel, where you had to pay nightly for a coffin bed. And if you were very fancy, you could get this hangover rope stretched across the dormitory, like to separate the rooms. But there were no separate rooms. This is crazy. The economic problems in Whitechapel also caused society to practically collapse with the amount of depravity going around. It is only understandable that Whitechapel back then was notorious for its immorality that included anti-Semitism, crime, nativism, racism, social disturbance, and severe deprivation. Such perceptions were strengthened in the year 88, where our specific story takes place. Now, when we want to talk about Jack the Ripper, there's something important that we need to keep in mind, because if we don't, we will be here attributing many crimes to this unknown face. Because, as I said, with the amount of depravities going around in these specific years in Whitechapel, it's hard to say if all of these crimes were committed by one person and weren't different acts done by different people. But what we are almost certain is 5 murders. And in this video I will mostly focus on those 5 murders that are attributed to Jack the Ripper. These 5 are known as the canonical 5, which includes 5 Jack the Ripper victims named Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Now with the last name of Catherine, Eddowes. So it could be Eddowes, I'm not sure. Mary Ann Nichols' body was discovered at the odd hour of 3:40 a.m. on a Friday night in August of 88, that is 1888, in a street known back then as Bucks Row, now named Dareward Street, in Whitechapel. Mary Ann had last been seen alive approximately an hour before the discovery of her body by a Mrs. Emily Holland. She was previously known to have shared a bed with her at a lodging house. And this woman, Emily, saw Mary Ann walking the direction of Whitechapel Road an hour before the body was found. Her throat was severed by 2 deep cuts, one of which completely severed all the tissue down to the vertebrae. There were 2 stabbings in her private parts, and the lower part of her abdomen was partly ripped open by a deep, jagged wound, causing her bowels to, Several other incisions inflicted to both sides of her abdomen had also been caused by the same knife. Each of these wounds had been inflicted in a downward thrusting manner. And 1 week later, a Saturday, September 1888, the body of Annie Chapman was discovered. This body was found at 6 a.m. near the steps of a doorway in the backyard of a house on 29 Hanbury Street. As in the case of Marianne Nichols, the throat of Annie was also severed by 2 deep cuts. Her abdomen was also cut open entirely this time, with a section of the flesh from her stomach being placed upon her left shoulder, and another section of skin and flesh, plus her small intestines, were removed and placed above her right shoulder. Chapman's autopsy revealed that her uterus and sections of her bladder and somewhere else had been removed. That is absolutely disgusting. I keep forgetting why these cases stay in people's minds for a long time, and then I read the details again, and I am reminded of why and how severe these attacks were. And it also seems ritualistic, pretty much, like it would be a part of a cult-like situation, maybe, because why would it do these things specifically? Now we said Mary Ann was less than an hour before, and this time Annie was seen even earlier. She was last seen only 30 minutes prior to her body being found at 5:30 a.m. by a woman named Elizabeth Long, and she described seeing Annie Chapman standing at the same doorsteps that she was found. And with her, she saw a man with dark hair wearing a brown deerstalker hat and a dark overcoat, and she said that she had a shabby, genteel appearance. What is genteel? It is from Old French and means well-born, of high social class. So I guess shabby genteel means that, well, it means what it means. And according to this eyewitness, Elizabeth, she said that this man had asked Annie, "Will you?" And she had replied, "Yes." The fact that these people were found pretty quickly after they were murdered goes to show how busy of a street or of a city it was, Whitechapel. Imagine she was murdered at 3:40 a.m. and she was found very quickly afterwards. So how is it that no one actually saw the murders? Because he did it in the streets, it seems. The murders were very quick. Like he had something in mind, he did it, and they just blended back into, other people. The next 2 victims, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, were both killed in the early Elizabeth's body was discovered approximately at 1 a.m. in Dotfield's yard of Berners Street, now known as Henry Case Street. The cause of death was a single clear-cut incision measuring 6 inches across her neck, which had severed her left carotid artery and trachea before terminating beneath her right jaw. The absence of any further mutilations to her body has led to uncertainty as to whether Stride's murder was committed by the Ripper, or whether he was interrupted during the attack. That is what I think. Several witnesses later informed police they had seen Elizabeth Stride in the company of a man in or close to Berners Street when she was found, but a day prior. So, not a day prior, a couple of hours earlier. And then she was found dead there, just like the other women. But each of the witnesses, interestingly enough, gave differing descriptions. Some said that her companion was fair, others said dark, some said that he was shabbishly dressed, and others said well dressed. And now let's imagine this is a chaotic part of the city, and people are basically going crazy with all of these societal problems and issues and difficulties. Murders like this start happening, I would imagine that there would be people that would say that they witnessed something and maybe they haven't. They either made it up, maybe they are completely crazy, they are out for attention, they want to prove their agenda about a specific group of people maybe. So I don't know, can we even trust the eyewitnesses in this case or not? Edo's body, what was her first name? Catherine. Catherine Edo's body was found in a corner of Mitre. How do you say this square? M-I-T-R-E. Mitre. In the city of London, 3/4 of an hour after discovery of the body of Elizabeth Stride. 3/4, so 45 minutes after finding Elizabeth's body, they found Catherine. Just like the others, her throat was severed from ear to ear, and her abdomen ripped open by a long, deep and jagged wound before her intestines had been placed over her right shoulder, with a section of the intestine being completely detached and placed between her body and the left arm. Now what makes me think for sure that he left Elizabeth's body after only cutting her throat, because he was interrupted, is that he immediately went on to attack his next victim to get what he wanted to finish the ritual. The left kidney and the major part of Catherine's uterus had been removed, and her face had been disfigured, with her nose inch and a half, respectively vertically incised through each of her eyelids. Oh, it says cuts measuring a quarter of an inch and half an inch, respectively vertically. So 2 cuts on the eyelids. It's very specific. It's definitely a ritual. And maybe he was angrier after being interrupted and did more to the next victim, which was Catherine, maybe. A triangular incision, the apex of which pointed towards a dow's eye, had been carved upon each of her cheeks, and a section of the auricle and the lobe of her right ear was later recovered from her clothing. Oh dear God, ew. The police surgeon who conducted the post-mortem upon Catherine's body stated his opinion that these mutilations would have taken at least 5 minutes to complete, at least. A bloodied piece of Catherine's apron was found also. And then, on November 9, 1888, the next victim's body was found. It was brutally mutilated, and like almost all of the others, disemboweled. This was the body of Mary Jane Kelly. She lived near Dorset Street. At 13 Miller's Court, she was found at 10:45 a.m. Her face had been hacked beyond all recognition, with her throat severed down to the spine, and the abdomen almost emptied of its organs. Her uterus, kidneys, and one breast had been placed beneath her head, and other parts of her body were placed beside her foot. And about the bed, and sections of her abdomen and thighs. I will stop. Just let's say she's been disemboweled and different parts of her body were put all around the room and all around her mutilated body. The heart, interestingly enough, this time was missing from the crime scene. Multiple ashes were found within the fireplace of this house, and it suggested Kelly's murderer had burned several items to illuminate the single room as he mutilated her body. A recent fire had been severe enough to melt the solder between a kettle and its spout, which had fallen into the grate of the fireplace. Now, each of these canonical 5 murders were done at night, and also on or close to a weekend, either at the end of a month or a week. The mutilations became interestingly and increasingly severe, and the series of murders continued, except severe than the others. Mary Ann Nichols was not missing any organs. Next, Annie Chapman's uterus and sections of her bladder were taken, and then Catherine Eddowes had her uterus and left kidney removed and her face mutilated, and the last one, Kelly, was extensively eviscerated and her face was gashed in all directions. Tissue of her neck were severed to the bone, and the heart, as we said, was missing. Although this video is a deep dive, I will not include the investigation that the London police did and all the possible other victims and the possible suspects and how they were thought to be not the killer, because then we will be here for a long time, and at some point I lose my ability to talk. It is already happening. So now I will get to now 2025, and I will be reading an article from dailymail.co.uk. This one is titled "Descendants of Jack the Ripper's Victims Want New Inquest After DNA Breakthrough on Killer's Identity." It was published on January 13, 2025. So it is not that recent, and I hadn't heard about it. So I wonder if it is actually true, because you'd think people would be talking about it more if we figured out who Jack the Ripper is. I think he's the most infamous unknown serial killer around the world. So maybe a lot of people would be coming out and saying, "Oh, I know who that is. It's like my great uncle or something." Let's not judge before we read the article, which says, "It is a mystery which has endured for more than 130 years. Now the descendants of Jack the Ripper's victims hope to finally establish the truth about one of the most notorious unsolved crimes of all time. They are backing a legal application," sorry about that, "for a new inquest into the death of Catherine Eddowes after evidence emerged to suggest that the killer was Aaron Kosminski, Kosminski, who was a Polish barber who emigrated to the UK from Poland in the 1880s. He was actually a suspect at the time of the 5 murders in Whitechapel in 1888, but he was never arrested because police had no proof of his involvement. A blood-stained shawl said to have been found on Miss Eddowes' body, which was purchased at auction in 2007 by author and Jack the Ripper researcher Russell Edwards, was later found to have the DNA of both victim and Kosminski. Interesting. Now I want to know, where did he get Aaron Kosminski's DNA? I get where they have Catherine's DNA. Or maybe they have his DNA from when he was a suspect. I don't know, why would they keep something that they didn't know was going to solve the crime in the future. The article continues. In October last year, the Mail revealed that Mr. Edwards, which was that writer, Russell Edwards, had uncovered new evidence of Aaron Kosminski's links to the highly secretive Freemasons, which may have motivated his sadistic killings and shielded him from the law enforcement, ensuring he was locked away in an asylum where he died. Very interesting. So this man, who is known for being Jack the Ripper, was part of Freemasonry, and he was known to be a schizophrenic lunatic, and they kept him in an asylum till he died. Now maybe that could also be the reason why we are not hearing a lot about it. Maybe they don't want Freemasons and the name Jack the Ripper to be known together. Now, Mr. Edwards has hired a legal team to fight for an inquest on the grounds that there is further evidence for a coroner to consider about the circumstances of the death and, crucially, who was responsible. The campaign has been backed by the descendants of both Miss Catherine Eddowes and Aaron Kosminski, who say it is time to unmask the true killer and get justice for the women involved. I have to say, I don't know who. 3 people. I mean, the last. What I'm trying to say is that I barely know I actually don't know my grandparents' names. And here we have the descendants of people who lived in 1880s and were murdered, now fighting for their justice. That is kind of awesome, not kind of like. The other 4 victims were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, and Mary Jane Kelly, as we talked about. Karen Miller, 53, who is the 3 times great-granddaughter of Catherine Eddowes, provided her DNA, which matched her ancestors' blood on the shawl. She said the name Jack the Ripper has become sensationalized. It has gone down in history as this famous character. It has all been about him, the iconic name, but people have forgotten about the victims who did not have justice at the time. What about the real name of the person who did this? Having the real person legally named in a court which can consider all the evidence would be a form of justice for the victims. We have got the proof. Now we need this inquest to legally name the killer. It would mean a lot to me, to my family, to a lot of people, to finally have this crime solved. Interesting words. Descendants of the Reaper's other victims have also begged cause for a new inquest. I think the whole world begs this new inquest. I don't know why they wouldn't get into it quicker if they have this evidence, right? So what is the problem? There should be a problem here. But it would mean a lot to finally be able to name the killer, to get some closure on this. These women have been dismissed as just workers, like they did not matter, but they did. Kosminski's descendants have also supported the move. His 3 times great niece, Amanda Poulos, Poulos, said, Poulos probably, I'm more than happy to finally establish what really happened. What do you mean you're happy to know your great uncle was Jack the Ripper? I would say that it would be cool. I mean, it's been some years. When the original inquest was held on October 4, 1888, a verdict of willful murder was returned, but police were still hunting for the serial killer at the time. So they did try to get this man, Kosminski, for these murders, but it was overturned because they didn't have enough evidence. Under the law, the Attorney General has to grant permission for any applications to the High Court for a further inquest. So they really got to get these people looking into it. 2 years ago, Sir Michael Ellis, then the Attorney General, refused permission, saying that there was not sufficient new evidence. But a barrister, Dr. Tim Sampson, said that this set a terrible precedent in relation to requests to reopen inquests involving the violent deaths. Okay. And the article continues a bit more, talking about why they need to look into this inquest, but not really further into what all the evidence is. I mean, they have a shawl. How are they even sure that this shawl belongs to Catherine? I don't know, I really don't know, because you would think if these evidences were sufficient enough, these judges, or whatever they are called, would approve to reopen this case to name the killer, if they're sure that, yes, this DNA, this shawl, first of all, is authentic. It belonged to this person who was killed by Jack the Ripper. And then it has a lot of things to go through. I don't know. It's interesting though. It's interesting that this man, Kosminski, was actually a suspect. So in a lot of people's minds, he is the killer, even though it would be really hard to reopen a case and to name him the killer. I think he is Jack the Ripper. And isn't that interesting? I wish there was more to know about this man. I will look into that. possible that the same people who all those years ago kept him from getting caught and paying the consequences for these crimes are the same people who are still backing him and not letting him carry the name Jack the Ripper. I don't know. There are a lot of things that I wanted to talk about tonight that I don't have the time for. So I will definitely do a part 2 for Jack the Ripper, in which we will look deeper into Aaron Kosminski and why they think he is Jack the Ripper, and if he's not, who is it, and how did the police did their investigation, what was their methods. I will look into those in another video. I hope this far into this one you're already asleep, and if you are, I hope